Last year's Tiger Woods Challenge captured every single facet of the sport, while making the whole experience effortlessly accessible. But for the 2004 edition, EA has taken what it's learned, polished the game up loads, and generally had a good time playing around with some new fun ideas. The first of these, another huge step forward for the series, is the Create a Golfer option. Build an incredibly detailed version of yourself, adjusting all physical attributes and body types such as head shape, eye colour and skin tone. It's a great idea and worth persevering with to capture your own near likeness, especially if you're playing with friends, where it really ramps up the fun factor. We've created our own ugly mugs for the purpose of this demonstration. The new PGA Tour mode provides a staggering 52-week PGA Tour calendar of events for up to 10 seasons.
Wouldn't get any straighter than this.
Here you can obtain sponsorship deals from real golf equipment manufacturers throughout your career and drive to surpass Tiger himself as #1 on the overall money list. All this golfing perfection is rounded off with a gargantuan range of challenges and new game modes that will keep you busy for months. There's long drive shootout, best ball, alternate shot, Stableford scoring and battle golf. Every match, tournament and scenario unlocks further rewards in the form of characters, courses and equipment. Plus, 7 new courses have been added to give a grand total of 19, including more than 10 of the world's most prestigious and new fantasy ones too. Annoyingly, the commentators will tell you where they think the ball will land, and they're always right, which kind of takes the suspense out of the whole thing. And for some mad reason, Electronic Arts has decided not to let you play online in the UK, even though the US version has people teeing off with each other all over the internet. Ultimately, no other golf game comes close to matching Tiger's 2004 Challenge, which offers the accessibility of 2003's outing with more superb character animation, gorgeous locations and comprehensive features.
Tiger Woods PGA Tour 2004.
Club football stakes its claim somewhere in the middle ground between the greatness of Pro Evolution Soccer 2 and the officialness of FIFA football, borrowing all the best bits from both camps and adding some major new innovations along the way.
Red card. His manager will not be happy. That's well into...
Club football is available in 17 different variations, each themed around a specific team, allowing you to play through a Premiership season. If you're not a fan of any of these clubs, then it's a tricky choice to make. But let's say you're an Arsenal fan, for instance. Obviously, you'll buy the Arsenal variant. What you get here is 110% pure Arsenal with the Gunners insignia all over it. Plus, there are all kinds of themed goodies to unlock. Before you go anywhere, club football prompts you into creating your very own image within the game itself. A reasonable representation of your actual self is pretty easy to come up with, and you get a bank of points that needs to be divvied up into various skill categories. Finally, you can even choose your own commentary name from a huge list of pre-recorded voiceovers before heading straight on into the first game of the season.
Schwartz, Scowcroft.
Initially, you're just a squad player, so your first priority is finding a place on the team. A simple process, just switch yourself for one of the first team strikers or midfielders, as you'll obviously want to score all the goals yourself. You also get to fiddle with the shamelessly Pro Evolution inspired formation options if you want to, otherwise it's straight into the action.
Thank you, Gary. Referee gets the match underway.
Club football attempts to win the affections of Pro Evolution Soccer 2 addicts with a control system that's pretty much identical. It's all here, and thankfully all laid out on the same buttons. It plays well too. Generally passing, tackling and running around is pretty tight, though the shooting can be a bit hit or miss at times, which isn't great, but at least it plays a better game than the unresponsive and imprecise FIFA. There's still considerable room for improvement in the finer points of gameplay, but Codemasters have created a rock-solid foundation for yearly updates. All we need now is full support for all Premiership and nationwide flavours. And even without live play, it's the best Xbox football game currently available. Go buy it. Introducing classic 2D franchises to the third dimension is always a risky venture, and to be quite honest, we had our doubts about this latest Worms makeover right from the start. We knew it was a bad idea, destined for the sewers of failed gaming makeovers that lose that special something that wove the original so tightly together. You see, Worms had it all. It required both skill and cunning. You had to be at one with your Worms power gauge at all times, commanding an earth-shattering arsenal with chess-style lateral thinking. But Team 17, amazingly, has pulled it off. And not only have they managed to exactly translate this benchmark formula into full 3D, but they've actually improved on the original concept as well. Instead of stripping away the genius afforded by the original's two-dimensional play, Worms 3D has survived the dimensional transition, and lobbing a cluster bomb still commands the same chaotic effects as it used to. Endless environments can still be generated at the drop of a sticky bomb for you and your slippery pals to battle it out on. Walk up to an opposing worm with your Uzi and watch his facial expression change to one of sheer terror. You can call in an airstrike and actually see the plane this time round. You can even use the 1-minute time limit to move your worm to a more strategic and perhaps safer location. Consider the multiplayer aspect too. No live play is an obvious letdown, but 4-player gaming will never ever be the same again. You even have to pass the pad around, a truly masterful finishing touch. And while there is the odd wonky camera angle or two, it hardly ever hinders what's actually going on. Some people will shy away from the heavy strategic element that's hidden away beneath the arcade styling, but give it a go and you'll soon be hypnotised by the stupid addictiveness of this truly brilliant 3D translation. Oh dear, despite our continuous optimism over the past months, Raw 2 hasn't exactly turned out how it should have done. We'd hoped for something that plays well, or at least buried the sins of the original game with ease, but there's still so much that's wrong. Try to grapple with an opponent and you'll completely miss the target, flailing about like a buffoon as your wrestler lunges forward about 2 in-game yards. Connect with a move and your opponent sometimes bounces in a variety of unpredictable directions and you never really know if your hits are going to connect. If it's pure looks you're after, then Raw 2 looks authentic enough, well, just about. You get nice looking selection of wrestlers and a saucy costume collection for the ladies. Everyone has nice shiny skin, muscles look muscular, and the faces, expressions and movements of the world's greatest athletes are all pretty good. But while the people look good, the crowd and surroundings are less so. The camera sometimes treats you to a nice close-up shot of the crowd members, especially if you happen to be fighting out of the ring, and it's not a pretty sight. Square heads bob up and down, and the flat-faced horrors stare into the camera with the true vacant expression of the American wrestling fan. The game's season mode is also a serious letdown, the sort of crusty old season mode we played in wrestling games 5 years ago. What you get here is a basic text screen list of matches with the odd cutscene of backstage action. You can have 4 players here if you want, all going for the championship together, but chances are you won't bother. There's a fairly rudimentary list of game options to be found elsewhere, basically the standard collection of match types, and very little any fan of wrestling games won't have got bored with many years ago. If you take your wrestling in the simplest possible fashion, the chances are you'll love it. But for people with half a brain, it's just too generic and hindered by ineffective moves and a lack of decent attacking options. Basically, there's little here that hasn't been done before and better elsewhere.
Desert Storm 2 is a time trip into military combat, where SAS and Delta Force troops combine and take offensive action against Iraq. Desert Storm 2 is based on survival as much as assault, and rather than standing around like clueless cannon fodder, each soldier in your 4-man team will need to be positioned strategically, with the knowledge that as soon as enemies are alerted, they will spread out and attack with stealthy precision. Flicking between each soldier allows you to go on solo attack runs, and there's fun to be had positioning your sniper in a high vantage point to provide covering fire for your ground-based heavier weapons. As well as using rocket launchers and traditional AK-47s to hand out justice, quieter stealth kills are rewarded with extra points and are well worth extra effort.
Alpha 1, you have an enemy heading for your position. Over.
After the desert has been conquered, further missions will lead you into a crowded bunker complex, for instance, where tough decisions have to be made as you provide covering fire for an air-based evacuation. Should you storm the advancing forces on foot, hold back with anti-tank rockets, or call in the airstrikes, presuming the soldier who can order an airstrike is still in the land of the living, of course.
Roger that, Alpha 1.
Conflict Desert Storm 2 is scarily realistic, and if war disturbs you, then it's probably best to stick with something less dramatic. But for the rest of us trigger-happy heroes, Conflict Desert Storm 2 has enough strategy and realism to make it worth a look.
Your engine. Starring a host of vehicles created by the monstrous motoring empire of Henry Ford, Ford Racing 2 allows players to get behind the wheel of no less than 32 different Ford vehicles spanning around 50 years of noble heritage. The lineup of ancient classics and modern-day motors is a well-rounded selection. Serious Ford enthusiasts can take pleasure in a range of 50s Thunderbirds and Mustangs, while the more serious arcade thrill seeker will hone in on the Focus Rally and the new F-150. Although we're promised fairly realistic handling, the feel is distinctly arcadey, which kind of makes sense given the fact that you won't be racing on real-life tracks at any stage in the game. Instead, you get pretty-looking themed circuits, including some off-road sections to test your rubble-rattling abilities in the larger vehicles. The The more races you win, the more spectacular cars you'll unlock, until you reach the extra special Ford concept section. Given their somewhat wacky nature, you can understand why most of these beasts never made it out of the factory. But at least they're mighty pleasing to look at and much faster than anything else available. Ford Racing 2 is a fairly undemanding and fun driving title. The graphics aren't exactly world-beating, but they're just about pretty enough for any car enthusiast to take note. It's not possible to damage the cars either, and that's a big disappointment, along with the exclusion of those irritating Ford cars. It's sad in a way, as the two would have been a perfect match, and we'd happily pay the bargain asking price of £14.99 just to have fun smashing those up. The high concept behind Alter Echo is actually quite a good one, so why then has it been sadly swallowed by an action romp of staggering averageness? Set in the year 2850, you take on the role of a young soldier, thrown into a mighty morphing ectoplasmic suit with the power to both manipulate time and distort himself into varying forms of weaponry. It sounds kind of crazy even for a mind-bending sci-fi adventure, but sadly the execution is something of a disaster. Still, there's always something happening. The levels are pretty short, action-packed and very well linked together. You're always spoon-fed information as to exactly what you're supposed to do next as well. You're told what to shoot, how to shoot it, and what to do afterwards, and there's a whopping 45-minute training mission beforehand just in case you're unsure of things. By the time this epic training session links into the actual game itself, you'll be climbing walls, morphing into a giant robot and gunning things down every second. And yes, there's lashings of pretty special effects to top it all off. The way you morph from human to giant robot to weird crawling creature with prehensile tongue being a good example. You can control time too. Fill up your time dilation gauge by collecting the yellow orbs enemies leave behind, and your time warp mini-game pops up. Here, via a ridiculously fast puzzle game that lasts for around 10 seconds, you must link up a few enemy blocks to freeze time, emerging into some sort of hyperspace altered reality background where you knife the enemies to death with one hit. The whole body-changing idea is superbly well done. You've got special moves galore, combos, guns, energy enhancers, and loads more homing, locking, exploding and shooting toys. But it's all a bit too easy though, and you'll slash your way through without dying at all. If you're after some easy, no-brain gaming, it's more than enough. But the stilted, predictable script and repetitive, uninspired level design make for a very standard action romp that's spruced up with a few interesting, if badly executed, ideas.
The first slightly peculiar thing worth noting about Chaos Bleeds is that rather than taking the opportunity to go back to Buffy's early high school days, generally regarded as the best years of the show, development team Eurocom has decided to set the game towards the end of its 7-year run, creating a lost episode from Season 5. The game is spread across several large chapters, with each chapter being played out from the point of view of one of the playable protagonists. Not only do you get to play with Buffy and her fellow members Willow and Xander, but bad boy vampire Spike is now a fully playable member of the team too. And fans can also look forward to an appearance from Buffy's ex-squeeze, Angel. Naturally, each of these characters has their own range of skills and special moves. Buffy specialises in fisticuffs and spade wielding, while Willow has a range of spells on offer. And just when you've mastered Xander's slightly awkward style of attack, for example, you're suddenly presented with the infinitely more accomplished and freewheeling Spike. It's taken its time getting here perhaps, but with its in-jokes, familiar cast and series-referencing storyline, Chaos Bleeds is every Buffy fanatic's wildest dream come true.
You should never have left the crypt today.
Not without its faults, mind, and the continuous staking of vamps gets rather repetitive rather quickly, and the puzzle solving is about as basic as it gets. But at least it all looks great, from the recognisable locations, Buffy's house, the magic box, and the strangely less than final resting place of Sunnydale Graveyard, to the big, well-animated characters, sporting more than just a passing resemblance to their real-life counterparts. In short, it almost feels like you're watching an episode of the programme itself.